What's up, y'all? It's 10 at 3 time in Tennessee. How are you? Hope you're well. Hope everything is going well in your world on this Friday, January the 2nd, 2026. Already one correction to make. I wrote 2025 on the top of my notepad here.
It's going to happen for the next few days at the minimum. Got
that corrected into a 6, but I hope that the grogginess is away. I hope that you've got clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose now after waking up on January the 1st and dealing with the things that you always deal with when you wake up on January the 1st, or at least a lot of people do. That's how life goes. I got to tell y'all, this is a day.
A little bit. It was a night last night, for sure.
Yes, it was. And that, man, later we got to talk about that Sugar Bowl. What a game. The playoff finally gave us something that was super, super awesome.
After back-to-back blowouts.
what a game, man. What a game. And I think the funniest part to me was I was sitting there and my mom was up watching that game and sent me a text that said, "Hey, Georgia lost," which is always funny because I'm like, did you think I wasn't watching the game?
Right.
It's so funny. But she's still up. She's giving it a go, And then she sent a text a minute later, maybe Georgia lost? ? And then another one, did they lose? I'm like, eventually, yes.
There was a shot there on the field with Ole Miss's QB going, "What is going on?" You could just read his lips.
What is happening
after
here?
the third victory, or close to the third victory?
Yeah, do you get an automatic pass to the finals now because you won that game like 3 times? What a game! And then Georgia with the just tremendous fake punt call, and then the fourth down. Just blunder
it was excitement, thrills, chills. He had it all.
And then it came back from that call that was just an accident that somebody got their wires crossed on that fourth down when the ball gets snapped to Stockton, and he wasn't expecting it because he thought they were going to take a delay game.
Yep.
And then he gets sacked, and then Ole Miss goes up 2 scores, and then Georgia comes back to tie it. And then, man, what a football game that was. And congratulations to Ole Miss, too. It's been quite a time for them lately.
It has. They had their belts out, right? You've been following the whole belt saga thing this season, but
the belt to the backside.
Yeah, the belt to the backside. And then there were a couple of chants on the field. I don't think we can repeat them necessarily after they won.
No,
but I think it involved a certain coach.
I've heard. What's funny is how many different places have used that exact same chant now. I have heard it now in multiple locations.
I feel like we heard it here at some point in this millennia.
No, I got to tell you, the way that Lane Kiffin leaves a place is just, it's chef's kiss. It is the carnage left in the wake of everywhere he goes. And I've said this before. I'll say it again. I have no qualms in saying this, Tom Barclay.
Yep.
I like Lane Kiffin. Maybe I shouldn't say that.
You probably shouldn't here.
But
it would be okay to say it in a
covered him for
in a market where he didn't coach in.
Well,
outside of LSU,
I enjoyed covering him. I didn't sleep a lot that year, but I enjoyed it, and I still have communicated with him since he's left now and then, and still follow each other, see what's going on, because Lane's always paying attention to things everywhere.
Yeah,
and it's one of those things that he's kind of like, it's like that crazy cousin or something where you're like, a couple times a year you're pretty fun, but if I lived in the same city as you, I don't know that I would love it. But tell you just roll into town for the holidays, it's kooky, it's a little fun.
Even my barber has a story about old Lane Kiffin. I think you probably know the story too because it's that one over there near Sequoia Hills, right? Where he owes them some money.
Yep. There are
That's one of the classic Lane stories.
There are some tremendous, and some that I am fairly certain. Again, we talk about think and know.
Yeah.
And again, there's a difference as a journalist. There's I think something, I know something, and I can report something because I've documented something.
Yeah.
So there's like 3 different kinds of things, right? There's things you think, and then there's things you know, and then there's things you can document so you have it verified to report it. And the amount of things that, like with that Lane Kiffin era, that like I know, but I can't quite document enough. Like if I'm TMZ, I'm maybe going with it, but I'm not. So let's just say some fun times. And since then, just to tell y'all what kind of day it's been. You know, we've talked about this several times. Tennessee lately there's been a strong propensity for news to emerge beginning at 4:01 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah, that's
because
I found that out last night.
We go off the air at 4, and let me tell you, they come hot and heavy right after 4 o'clock. They like to keep it a little bit quiet between the hours of 9 and 4 a lot of times. But
also love holidays too. For
right
some
after
reason.
4, whew, and yesterday, right when we left, of course, it emerged that Tennessee was parting ways with Kurt Schmidt, the strength coach, which is a huge deal. I'm not exaggerating when I say this. The strength coach is basically the offseason head coach. It is absolutely a Rushmore figure in a program, and arguably the second or third most important person in a program, in a football program. And Kurt Schmidt had been the only strength coach to work as the main strength coach for Josh Heupel during his entire time as a head coach. Mm-hmm. Not like literally the only one that he's had. At UCF, he hired him because he knew him because they worked together at Mizzou the year before.
Yep.
And so when Heupel becomes a head coach in 2018, I believe, at UCF, he hires Kurt Schmidt to be his strength coach. And then when he goes from UCF to Tennessee, he takes Kurt Schmidt with him. And there have been some questions this year about, did Tennessee need to make a move? There were questions last year a little bit. But you get to a playoff and you can't complain too much. But he was given an extension of only 1 year. So his contract is set to expire at January 31st of this year.
So they're just letting that run out.
And it came out yesterday that they're letting that run out. And so that, again, with the Tim Banks thing and now with this, you're seeing from Josh Heupel that we've talked about this before, think he's kind of reading the room. He's getting outside of his comfort zone. He's making decisions that he may not have made in the past to remove good people or really good people in an attempt to get great people to get over the top. And a bunch of us have said it. I've said it no less than a few times, probably a dozen or more times. Would he be ruthless enough to make these moves that they don't guarantee you anything? Mm-hmm. In fact, they can make it worse. Anytime you make a hire or you make a move, there's 3 outcomes. You get better, you get worse, you stay the same. Only one of those 3 options is good, really. But you can't, no risk it, no biscuit. And so people have wondered, and I think fairly so, would Heupel do those things? And so when that happened yesterday, I could have talked for an hour today just about how important that Kurt Schmidt news was. Because now who are they going to go hire? What are they going to go do? And this is, again, expanding on this storyline of what Heupel needs to do to get things where Tennessee fans want them to be and expect them to be and, frankly, pay for them to be. Mm-hmm. And since then, a topic that I could have spent an hour discussing just on its own, 5, 6, 7, 8 things that are also huge stories have emerged since then. So it's silly season, ladies and gentlemen. It's silly season. But something that is not silly, which we will discuss first, is the Joey Aguilar situation. That is, you read a headline, you read a story, and straight away it can look serious. But I stress when I say this, we don't know enough to know just how serious this is or was. And I don't mean that in any sort of dismissive way at all. Not at all. Be very clear about that. I'll poke at the table. I'm not taking this lightly at all. I am not diminishing this at all. I am saying we don't know just how serious this is or was. In fact, it could be much more serious than we think it could have been less serious than we don't know. But the headline, and credit to Ian Rappaport, former Alabama football beat writer years ago. Now he covers the NFL and does a tremendous job breaking a lot of news at the NFL level. And he apparently still got some contacts in the college game because old Ian, or I guess he could have gotten it from an NFL scout or GM or somebody. But news broke that Joey Aguilar had a benign tumor removed Friday morning, this morning, that was pressing on his shoulder, his biceps, his tendon, and causing pain and discomfort. Now, again, I say, I don't want to assume. I am guessing, and I've put out texts here to try to get confirmation on this, and I don't have it yet. I want to make sure it was his throwing shoulder because it makes sense that it would be his throwing shoulder.
Yeah, it's not clear exactly which arm it is.
Now, again, a even a benign tumor in either shoulder or bicep is it's they say there's no such thing as minor surgery, because if you ever had surgery, there's no such thing as minor surgery. Had a few of them myself. They're not minor. None of them are. But there's probably no such thing as like a minor tumor. Like it's a growth that is not supposed to be in your head that is in your head. Like it or in your head, in your body, in your shoulder, anywhere in your body.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to be there. I say head. It's weird because my mom had a brain one years ago, and so that's the first place my head goes. Maybe that's why she's still texting me at 1 o'clock in the morning about college football games. I kid. I love you, Mom. You're the best. But it was causing discomfort and weakness, and he played through it for what we can say is at least. It happened at least 8 weeks ago, maybe. And that's when it was found. So, there's probably some issues before then. And you're like, oh, did I get hit? What's going on here? Did I stretch something out?
And then, a young guy like that, you're not going to think. First thing go to your mind is not going to be a tumor.
I'm imagining here, where your head goes in a situation like this is you go, okay, I'm guessing he had some weakness or pain in the shoulder, and he went to the training staff about it. And they couldn't quite figure out what it was, and they said, "All right, let's do some scans, see if you've torn something." And then they go, "Oh, well, this is actually much worse than that. That's a tumor." And so, then I'm guessing they test and find out it's benign. So, can you play through this? Do you want to play through this? And he said he played through it, and in an era where no one would have batted an eye if he had said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and shut this down. It's a tumor. I want it out of my body right now. I know that this will end my season, so maybe end my college football career pending the lawsuit and all that. But no one would have batted an eye. You do you. You want that. You have a tumor in your body, an unnatural growth that you want removed. Yes. You need to get that out. He didn't do that. He said he wanted to finish the season. And then I imagine you go through the Oklahoma game, and then you learn that you're almost certainly not going to be in the college football playoff. Technically, there was a chance, but even then I said it's such a small chance, there's almost no way this happens. At that point, he still says, no, I'm going to play through this. And because at that point, you're thinking, okay, well, you're not going to get to the playoff. If you get the surgery now and you don't win the lawsuit, you can still at that point, you will be back for, pro day. You'll be back for combine. You'll be back for these sorts of things, right? But he says no, and he wants to play through it. And then Tennessee, the second half against Vanderbilt happens. We know well how that went. And at that point, he said, I'm going to go ahead and play in this bowl game that doesn't mean anything. And it's like, there's one of these things where I say before that there are things that happen where you tip your cap when they do happen, but you don't blame anybody if they don't. Like when somebody says, I'm going to go ahead and play through something, I'm going to play a game that doesn't matter, risks, some things, you tip your cap. But if somebody says, no, I don't want to do that, it's not reciprocal, right? You don't blame somebody if they don't do that.
Right.
And so, but that, and I stress this again, we don't need to know. It would be helpful to know, exactly which arm it was, exactly how serious it was, exactly how much pain and discomfort it was causing, exactly what the timeline was. So I stress there's a lot we need to know here. But I think this just, no matter what, it says a tremendous amount about a young man who everybody over there was quite fond of anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And just to give you reference on how quiet this was kept, there are someone in the program when I was sending out texts about, hey, guys, was it his throwing arm? Just, hey. And one of the replies that I got back was, I'll be honest, I don't know, because I heard about it when you did.
Mm-hmm.
That's shades of the Chris Lofton situation years ago when he played through, when he had testicular cancer and he had the tumor removed during his senior season, and only a handful of people plus the doctors knew. Even some teammates didn't know. His roommate knew because, Chris was at night getting sick in a bucket all night. And so you can't hide it from your roommate. They're going to know, right? Roommate's going to be like, hey, you all right, man? So he had to know. But, it's, I'd be interested to know just exactly who knew this and who didn't and how serious it was. But it's still just the bottom line is, it's, man, that's impressive because he played in a couple games that did not mean hardly anything.
Mm-hmm.
And the last game, which meant absolutely nothing. But it is a selfless thing, and it seems that way. But there's also components of it where you go, okay, he knows that we'll see what football is like for him after this. He just wants to play with his boys, right? Like that. And that would be more than enough reason. But I'm saying, like, it's not just you're doing it for them. You also might be doing it for yourself. But no matter what, you're showing some stones to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great story. I hope that we can get Joey or someone in his family in here or on the air through Zoom or something at some point and talk about this, because I think there's a lot to parse over with this.
Absolutely.
But it's, just what a story. Like it's you just, it's further evidence of something that I think we say all the time, or I try to say all the time, and it can seem trite, it can seem phony, it can seem performative, it can seem white knightish, it can seem all of these things, but I do try to say all the time, things aren't necessarily what they look like because there's one person whose experiences we know, and that's ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not anybody else. Neither of you are anybody else. Now, if it's your spouse or your child or a parent, your best friend, partner, you might know a fair amount. You might know a lot. But even then, it's hard to truly empathize because you can't walk in anyone else's shoes. You can't, you just can't. It's not possible, right? Even the technology of this era does not quite give us that yet. We're able to now take human brains and teach them how to play Pong when they're outside of a body, and they get better as they're playing. So, we're doing a lot of things scientifically and medically out there in the world right now, but I still pretty sure we don't know exactly what someone else is thinking. There's no way to know that. And we don't know what they're feeling. But it's always important in this world we're living in now, where everybody can self-publish. Everybody can send a message directly to just about anybody else in the world. You think about that. Just about anyone on this planet has the ability to take their phone, nice cracked screen I have here, thanks having a toddler, that's what you get, their tablet, their laptop, and they can send a message directly to just about any other individual on the planet. When you think about that, that's nuts. Now, some people have enough social media followers or accounts so they get enough messages where they're not going to see them. But still, in theory, we live in a world where just about anybody else can pick any other individual in the world and send them directly a message, which is crazy. It's crazy when you step back and think about that. I don't know how many people are on our planet. I know it's a lot. And we have the ability to do that. And that's an awesome power, but it's also an awesome responsibility, I think, to think just a second. And social media is not real life. Young people don't understand this, but it's not. Trust me, it feels like it, guys, but it's not. Stop letting it drive you crazy. It's not real. But you don't know what anyone else is going through. You don't know what they're carrying. You don't know what they're feeling. You don't know what they're thinking. You don't know how much physically or emotionally or psychologically it may hurt them to do something, because you don't know the factors that lead into it. You don't know. We don't know. Does that mean that we can't criticize at all? No. But it ought to give perspective to things. Like if, for instance, you're thinking, man, there were some throws that Aguilar made early in the season that he just, man, they just could have been a little bit better there late in the year. Well, he's got a tendon pushing on something causing pain, discomfort, and weakness. Could be part of it, right? Could be part of it. We don't know. When Chris Lofton was a senior at Tennessee, if he wasn't, he was producing, but he wasn't producing at quite the same level. He was still an All-American, but was he the same explosive athlete in some ways? Because between his sophomore and junior years, he'd gotten so much more explosive as an athlete. And you're thinking, man, he's still doing great, but it's not quite the same. Well, consider the possibility that he might be, I don't know, playing through testicular cancer recovery. Just think about that.
Yeah.
So you think about all these things. It doesn't mean you can't criticize. Not at all. But I think it should give everyone just a little bit more cause for pause and say, let's wait to hear the full story on this one. Let's wait to learn what goes into this. And again, there's times where, again, I don't want to seem trite. I don't want to seem Hallmark cardish. I don't want to seem, like a preacher, which I am not and don't want to be and have no desire or ability to be. But sometimes these things can serve as a nice reminder of, you know what? You don't know what anyone else is carrying. You don't know what they're going through. You don't know what they're feeling. You don't know. I mean, I was completely, well, I don't want to say completely unrelated, mostly unrelated. I was watching the Sugar Bowl last night and watching how many vicious hits Gunnar Stockton took during that game.
I mean,
and how
there's that one hit.
That's
the one I saw all over social media too.
I mean, and there were a handful of them in that game that it's like, is he taking a second to get up because he's lost his breath, or because he's dizzy, or because, you know what, I'm just a little sore. Let's take a beat here and it looks like he's genuflecting, but he's just kind of sitting there for a second. Just, hey guys, can I take a breath on this one? I'm gonna, he took. And some of the fourth down throws that he made, like the ones he made at Neyland, what an unbelievable gamer that guy is. But it's just like, you don't know. Think about, it's the job, and you're paid well now to do it. So, hey, and you step into the arena, you step into a world of accountability, criticism, and occasionally it's unfair or hyperbolized, exaggerated. That's part of it. And I'd like to say it's not. I'd like to think that we could possibly make a world where that's not the case. We're not. It's that ship sailed a long time ago. That's not what it is. It's, you can think of the world as you want it to be or the world as it is. And you can maybe try to move the ball toward the world you want it to be. It doesn't mean you're not living in the world as it is. But just what these guys go through to do it. And before we move on, there's one other thing, just completely another, you don't really think about these things kind of comment. I'll say this quickly, but like everyone knows I'm a big like Arsenal Football Club soccer fan. I just am my whole life. And one of their best players is one of the best players in the world, Martin Odegaard, midfielder, and has always been this great player. And he had a couple months where it's like he's just not playing very well. And you're like, what's going on? Is he hurt? And it turns out, his wife they'd had their first kid, and he wasn't able to sleep well through the night because he was, having to get up, change diapers, do bottles, rock kids back to sleep. And if you're not getting a full 8+ hours of sleep as a high-level athlete, studies have shown time and time again, your levels dip to a point where even the best become really ordinary really quick. Mm-hmm. I mean, you don't have to do what Tom Brady does and like sleep in this specific chamber and
Tom Brady's hyperbolic chamber.
Yeah, but like I will say this, he made those Under Armour like sleep pants, and they're probably the most comfortable article of clothing I've ever had in my life. So at least something good came out of that. Thank you for those ridiculously comfy Under Armour sleeping pants. Those are baller. But you just you don't think about things like this, but it's like, well, if when I become a parent for the first time and I go through it and I'm dragging in here with, bloodshot looking eyes, bags under them, hair all over the place, stuttering, just having a jumbo cup full of coffee every hour. Well, part of it, you're up all night with a kid crying or screaming or sick. So we never know exactly what's happening here. We often don't know it. So just a reminder. And again, glad that Joey Aguilar's surgery was successful. Glad that everything seems to be okay there based on what we've seen. And hopefully in 6 weeks or so, he'll be back. And, that's either doing workouts for the draft or potentially, if anything happens with that case, maybe coming back to Tennessee. We don't really know yet. But before we get into the portal stuff, which we will because there's quite a bit there, and you're going to hear a number. You're going to hear a number. Right now, as of the time we are recording this, and God, I say, as of the time this program started, how about that? That's the world we live in now. There were 18, I think, Tennessee names in the portal, which again is not, that seems like a huge number. I assure you that it's not, and we'll talk about that later. And hey, it's the world now. But Tennessee, before that, has made some changes, and it should not have taken me 30 minutes to mention this, but Willie Martinez is going to be released from his duties at Tennessee, according to some reports, which I have verified anyways, that he is again, another decision here that Josh Heupel has made that everybody likes Willie Martinez, man. He's been around for a long time. He's been with the team,
just the SEC in general, a long time.
He worked
pretty well.
He worked with Heupel at Oklahoma too. Yep. Like everybody in the game knows Willie, and a lot of people like to poke at a couple things that have not been great. Mm-hmm. He's been a heck of a defensive coach for a long time, and if he's not, he's not a Hall of Famer or anything, he's a good football coach. There's a reason why a lot of people want to bring him in and if he wants to keep coaching, he'll have a job like that if he wants one. He's Willie Martinez. But you have to sometimes make tough decisions with really good people because you need to change or you feel like you need to change.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is when Tennessee hires Jim Knowles, you're bringing in a new defensive coordinator, and it's highly unusual. Highly, highly unusual to bring in either a defensive or offensive coordinator and not have them bring at least a couple of their own people with them. Because again, I say this all the time, what you do professionally, the people who tend to have the best results, I think, are people who hire somebody to do a job and let them do their job the way they see fit. And if it doesn't work, then you step in and do something about it. But if you hire somebody, I would like to think that you trust them or you're not hiring them. Mm-hmm. And if you're hiring them, you should have candid conversations with them about what the expectations are. Here's the benchmarks. Here's what we want to do. Here's our culture. Here's how we operate. And I would think that person gives candid feedback on their own and says, hey, you want me to do this job. I I need this, this, and this. And you usually come to an agreement about that on the front end, or you at least, not specifics, but you're generally on the same page. You're generally on the same page. And, I think we've all been through situations like this in life. I've been through interviews too, where you say, hey, if I want to come do this, it's great. I'm flattered that you're interested in me. But since you did come to me, here are the couple things that I would like in order to make this work. And so, long story short, if Josh Heupel hires a defensive coordinator and that defensive coordinator wants some of his own people, well, you let him bring in his own people.
Yeah,
and then if it doesn't work, well, you know whose fault it is.
Yeah, that's
a
different conversation right there.
Because the head coach will be blamed for it.
Exactly.
But still, I don't think hiring somebody and then putting restrictions on them is generally the most efficient way to get results. I think, especially, and everybody's different. If you're hiring a young coach, this is one thing. Jim Knowles, dude's 60. He's been one of the best defensive coaches in the game for a long time. You treat everybody fairly, but you don't treat everybody the same. If that guy comes in and says, I need this, this, and this, you give him this, this, and this. You do, because you don't hire, you don't buy a Ferrari just to keep it in the shop or just to keep it in the, keep it in the garage. You take the tarp off and you go drive the thing. Right? At least a little bit. So he's got the right to bring in his own people. And I tell you, what we're seeing so far in this, pretty strong. Because the first hire that it looks like he's going to make, at least the first big one, to replace Willie Martinez, he's going to bring in Anthony Poindexter from Penn State, who is, he's definitely going to be a defensive backs coach at Tennessee. I think, if I had to guess, and this is a guess, I think he'll be co-defensive coordinator. That's probably a title given to make his salary what it needs to be. But this is a very, very, very good football coach who was an excellent football player, a college football Hall of Famer as a player from his days at Virginia. And he's coached, he's won a Super Bowl with the Ravens. He's been at Penn State. He's been at other places. He's a very, very good football coach and a guy who people know and a guy who can recruit and a guy who this is a big-time hire. This is a big-time hire. This is a big boy hire. So this is, again, generally speaking, defense not been Penn State's issue. And there was the UCLA game this year. I get it. Sometimes Knowles' defense takes a couple years to learn, which, again, we've had discussions on this. We don't need to keep doing it, but if you hire someone for a premium job and pay them premium money and you know that you might not get the best for a couple years, that's a hard sell. I understand that. So they're going to have to hit the ground running. They're going to have to for many reasons. But this is a good hire. And he's also, I believe, and I have not gotten this one confirmed yet, but I believe it's going to happen. He's also going to bring a staffer with him from Penn State who has listen, Tennessee is about to hire a football coach named Andrew Jackson, which is
fitting?
Just hilarious.
Yeah.
It's just sort of hilarious. And again, we're sports here. We're not going to litigate the tenure of Andrew Jackson as a president. A lot of people didn't love it. Let's just call it what it is. A lot of people, for a lot of reasons, didn't love it. But, it reminds me of a couple years ago when Tennessee signed Kurt Maggitt as a kid from Florida to play football. And Kurt Maggitt's high school coach had the name Jack Daniels.
Once again, there are no coincidences here.
No coincidences in the world. There are none. They're like Bob Ross doesn't make mistakes. There's just happy accidents, and there's also no coincidence in the world.
Bringing the Andrew Jackson back to Tennessee there.
Yes. Yep. And so and he was the defensive line coach at West Virginia. Then he did a job as a staffer at Penn State. He'll be, I don't know what his title will be at Tennessee, but he'll be involved, I would imagine, in the defensive line, somewhere down there in the front seven at least. Are we talking, assistant D-line coach? Are we talking D tackles, D ends, edge rushers? I don't know. But those are the moves. And I still think, I continue to hear that it looks like Rodney Garner will be back, but I don't know that for any certainty, but I think that's the case. And then we'll see what some of the other hires look like. But the reason why a lot of this stuff is in flux is well, some teams are still playing, at least 4 are still playing, and the portal window is open. And so this is silly season, for a reason. It's silly. It's madness. The portal opening, because you start hearing in December about guys who plan to enter the portal, guys who yada yada. Well, when it officially opens January 1st, then you see another flood. And you also see that because what happens is you have sort of, I don't know, what in the military they call them after action reports or whatever they call them. Like, you have your periodic assigned afterward one-on-one conversations where the coach and a player sits down and they go, okay, here's what kind of year it was. Here's how you did. Here's where we think you fit in the future. Here's what we like, what we don't like. Here's our assessment. And then the player says, well, here's what I feel like I went through this year. Here's where I feel like I am. Here's where I'd like to be. And can this happen here? And now it includes the caveat of, here's what I expect to be paid. Call it what it is. Now it's officially a business meeting because it's not just here's where you are performance-wise, here's how I think of you as a leader, or how I think of you as an employee, or how I think where you could be, what I like, what I don't like. It's also like, how much money are we talking here? That's what it is now. And so right now, Tennessee's got, at least at the time that we hit play or record or whatever fancy button is you're hitting over there, as soon as we hit that, there were, I believe, 18 in the portal right now, starting with Boo Carter, weeks ago, and leading to some of the big ones the past 24 hours, which I think the 3 biggest so far, the ones to at least talk about individually, are Ricky Gibson III, Lance Hurd, Caleb Herring. And again, I say this, Herring is the closest of a 3 as a surprise to me, but it's not. And all 3 of these are not surprising to me for very specific reasons. And very different reasons. And I think at the end of the day, my big point here is that getting upset when you see any player hit the portal is understandable. It's also often silly. Because the thing about this door, the thing about this portal, it's not one way. It's not a vacuum cleaner or it's not a leaf blower. It's both. You can bring in guys. Also, guys are going to leave. You also get to bring guys in. So judgment on a portal window should not even begin to start until that window closes. Even then, you got to wait for some results to have a full, accurate, description of how it went. But it's natural to get a little worried when guys go out of the portal. But I would also say, look at some of these names, especially some of these Penn State players who the reports say could be or are at least interested in coming in with Knowles and Poindexter and these guys to Knoxville. So there are names Tennessee is interested in that could be every bit as good or better than the ones that have talked about leaving or are leaving. I also would stress that just because you go into the portal or you say that you're going into the portal does not mean that you are leaving. Mike Matthews almost left last year. He didn't. They got that worked out, and he came back. All's well there. But let's start with Gibson. I don't blame Ricky Gibson for doing what he has every right to do, which is get the maximum amount he can get at every opportunity. I also don't blame Tennessee for being like, we've been through this a couple times already, we're not doing it again with you, if that's the way it went. Because let's not forget, and again, he has a right to do this, but Ricky Gibson actually did hold out last year. Like, he actually did hold out for a while and say, yeah, I need more money or I'm not coming back. Like, that's where I start to get a little bit uncomfortable. And Tennessee's had a few guys, and again, Tennessee's not the only one, but you cannot have your feet held to a fire. You cannot be held hostage every single time the window opens and have a good situation. So if a guy, and again, it's fine to say, hey, I want this. I think I performed or outperformed this. And in certain situations, you have to say, hey, that player's right. You weren't paying him enough. That happens. And in that case, hey, man, that's fine. Go negotiate more. That's fine. Last year, the fact is, and again, not all this is Gibson's fault, but he goes out there, holds out. Tennessee makes it work, coaxes him back, puts a lot of money into him. I mean, a lot of resources were put into him, a lot. And then he gets hurt in the first half of the first game and he doesn't play the rest of the year. Is that his fault he got hurt? No. No. Not his fault he got hurt. But he got hurt. And then if he's going to maybe, and he could be, hey, Willie left and I don't like that, and Banks left and I don't like that, and that would be a different story. And we should wait and be fair here. But I just, you've seen this with Nico Iamaleava, you've seen this with Boo Carter. When a player tends to take every window and try to squeeze you more and more and more, eventually as a program, you have to draw a line. It can't be, because you can't, no one's naive about this or should be naive about this. I'm sure some are. But money can't be the only reason somebody is with you. If you have too many guys in a program who money is the only reason they're there, you're going to have a hard time getting, generally speaking, you're going to have a hard time having the connectivity and the chemistry that you need to compete or to win championships at this level. It is what it is. You have to pay to get guys. There's period. Nobody needs to be naive about this. But I think in the past couple years, Tennessee has had a few too many guys who money may have been, if not the main reason they were there. And the money's got to be good because you're at Tennessee, you're trying to compete with the other Predators. You're going to have to pay. If you don't pay, you got no chance. But you still have to have people who feel connected to what you're doing in the building. And if it's hey, hit this number and I'll play here, that's fine. But they've also got to be totally bought into what you're doing. And if they're not, then I think eventually you can't let it be known. If everybody in your program knows that you can just go threaten them to hold out at every time the window opens and they're going to have to pay you to keep you, at that point you have no control over your organization. So you have to, it's a really fine line there, and I'm not saying it's easy to do because it's not, but you got to do that. So Gibson's a very, very talented player. I think he'll play in the NFL a long time if he stays healthy. But if he leaves, I think there's guys Tennessee can go get, and they can be okay. They're going to have to buy basically a whole new secondary, though, except for Ty Redmond. But that's the world we live in now. So, again, that portal goes both ways. You can cry over it, or you can take that money that you would have spent on these guys, go spend it on others, bring in new guys, build a team, let's go. You can complain and cry about how it is, or you can operate in the world that's reality, the one we live in, and try to win. That's what I'd do. Lance Hurd, I think he wanted a fair amount of money to come back, if I'm being honest. And I also think that he probably wanted to play left tackle. I'm guessing he did. They almost always do. Darnell Wright moved to the right tackle spot later in his career, and good thing he did. He's still making a lot of money. He became a first-rounder. It worked out for him. But I think when you have David Sanders, you're going to play David Sanders at left tackle going forward. And Lance Hurd, I think, wanted a lot of money, and I think he wanted to play left tackle, and I don't know if Tennessee can guarantee that. So, again, I'm all for saying what you got to say to get somebody as long as it's true. And I think you got to be realistic and say, hey, we love you, but here's the position we see for you, and here's what we think we can pay you or we'll be willing to. And then if both sides don't agree, then you got to go find somebody else. That doesn't bother me. I'm not surprised at all with that one either. And Caleb Herring initially surprised me a little bit. But then I thought about it some more, and I went, you know what? I understand this. I think he's a good player. He's a good edge rusher. But I also think he's a thin edge rusher. I think there are certain, like that kind of Leo role in some defenses, like in what Tennessee was running with Banks, guys like him I thought fit. Traditionally speaking, Jim Knowles has guys who are a little bit bigger on the ends, maybe guys who are more like a Tyree West size or somebody like that, or about that. And I don't think Caleb Herring ever really had that kind of, I don't think he had the frame to get that size. And so I'm guessing, because Caleb Herring is good enough talent at a premium enough position, an edge rusher, where somebody's going to pay him really well to go play football for him. And I wouldn't bat an eye if he was back at Tennessee. I think guys who could have been a starter next year. He could have been a starter next year. But I want to see what size he's listed at. And if I were smart, I would have done this earlier, but I'll do it now. Let's see. Caleb Herring, what are you? 6'5", 245. That's not a small human. It's not, 6'5", 245. Okay, not small. But again, we're not talking about average humans here. We're talking about Power 4, top level college football program defensive ends, and or edge rushers, and in some places, that's ideal. I think when you look at a lot of those Penn State guys, they were built a little bit differently, maybe a little heavier, maybe a little more, hold up against the run, maybe a little more, so that I could, and I don't know. Again, all this is, we're sipping through a fire hose here, y'all. This news comes out fast, and you have to be really careful. You got to be very intentional, I think, about saying what you think and what you know, always. And what I think here, I'm guessing that Jim Knowles wants a little bit different profile at that position. And I can imagine that Caleb Herring's a talented enough kid that you're not going to say, we don't want you to be here. You want him to be there. This is a really talented kid. You want him in your program. You worked your tail off to recruit him and get him there. You've already put a lot of resources into him. You would like him to stay with you. But he's also talented enough to demand certain things, or at least ask for a fair shot at certain things. And I could see where Tennessee goes, you know what, at that investment level, for someone who doesn't kind of seamlessly fit into what we want to do, I could see that being an issue. If that makes sense. I think it probably makes sense. That is something that makes sense to me. And there's not a single player like in that portal right now for Tennessee that I look at and go, man, that's not right. That doesn't look right. All these guys, there's some that are pretty obvious. Like Amari Jefferson was not gonna play a lot at Tennessee. That's fine. Bennett Warren maybe surprised me a little bit, but I think he's a nice young offensive tackle prospect. I think he could have a chance. And you know what? No matter what, thank you for your service, fella, because he was the fake injury guy on PATs this season, or he's had that role before. And if you know Tennessee football, you know what I'm talking about. But some of these other guys, I mean, Peyton Lewis, I got that one. It makes sense to me. Merklinger's pretty obvious. Trevor Duncan makes sense. That's fine. Marcus Goree Jr. makes sense to me. Lindstrom makes sense. Wallace makes sense. A lot of these guys, like, as long as you replace them with similar size kind of bodies and athleticism, you're fine. And some of these guys, and this is no disrespect intended here, some of these guys I think you can upgrade from. I think some of these guys, you're not really at all bothered by the fact that they're leaving. But the bottom line for me here is, and this is for me, it's not for you. You think however you want to think. I think I look at this number, and it's going to grow. It's not going to be 18 guys. It's going to be more than that. But remember, that goes both ways. Here is the challenge, though. I'll wrap up with this today. Tennessee has been pretty selective in the portal the past few years, which means that, and I think honestly, when you look at it, Tennessee's batting average in the portal is pretty strong in terms of the percentage of guys they got that fit and that produced. They've done a really nice job in terms of the batting average of guys that they've brought in. The issue is, frankly, they're going to have more of them, which means that you're going to be, anytime you add to a sample size, your percentage of hits most likely is going to go down. I mean, that's just sort of basic math to me. Like, it's not, well, not basic math, I guess it's theoretical, but I would think that the more people you bring in from the portal, the less selective that means you're being, which to me means that you're probably going to have percentage-wise a few more misses. But Tennessee, in the Heupel era now, they've been stacking recruiting classes at a pretty good clip. When you look at year to year, the classes they've brought in, they're bringing in good classes that when you stack them, traditionally you can compete with anybody, at least compete with. The issue is that I think the number of guys leaving, sometimes it's not even close to reciprocated the other way in terms of guys you're bringing in. And the way you look at a college football roster now, it's kind of a year-to-year deal. And you combine the number of signees you have with the number of portal additions you have, and you say, how many instant impact guys am I getting? How many guys am I getting both from this class and from the portal that give me a better chance to win this year? And that's where I think Tennessee's got to evolve, because it sounds well and good. And hey, look at, Georgia, for instance. A drastically higher percentage of their starters are guys they recruited out of high school. Now they've brought in some big time transfers too, because everybody does, or everybody except for Dabo traditionally. But it's you need to be bringing in a larger number of people compared to what you're losing on an average basis. That's where this thing's got to evolve. And I don't think Tennessee necessarily needs to have someone with the general manager title. Again, I don't care what you call it. That makes no difference to me. The title itself, to me, means just about nothing. If you have someone or a group of people, a committee of people who are making those decisions, I don't care what you call them. Call them the Wizard of Oz. Call them Tonto McStupid. I don't care what you call them. I don't. Moron McStupid, whatever you want to call them. Just that's what they do. And whether that's Heupel, whether that's other people, they just, I think, they need to bring in a larger volume. I think that's when you look at what college football is right now, and that comes with the risk, of course, of changing your culture in a way that you don't like. It's not like it's so obvious that even considering the alternative, it's not like it's something that's foolproof. It's not something that's automatic. Anything you do is a risk. But I think you need to bring in more people. When you look at the number that you're losing and you look at the number your peers are losing, and then you look at what they're bringing in, I think you need to be bringing in, you're not trying to catch a stationary target. You're trying to catch a moving target. And all these guys are trying to improve too, and they're bringing in a lot of people. And I think instead of focusing on just getting it right, which it should be number one, but you're going to have to also take some more chances because you're going to have to get just a few more dynamic athletes. You're going to have to fortify a few positions because we've seen how thin those margins are. It's razor thin between being good and really good. And then from really good to great's even tougher. I don't know if you can do that, but if you're Tennessee, I think you can at least get closer to that level if you bring in a few more people and be open to more ideas. And I think the good news there is it looks like Josh Heupel is starting to see a lot of these things more clearly. Proof's in the pudding, but I think he's starting to see some of these things the way he needs to see them, and we'll see how he does in the next few weeks in learning all this. Guys, have a really good weekend. Be safe out there. Be good to each other. And I guess we'll see you in no less than 71 hours. We'll see you then.